name is Mary Helen Becklin, and today I will be giving a presentation explaining how Jane Eyre is a modern absurdist antihero, and I will be doing this by comparing the character of Jane Eyre to the character of Sisyphus from the Myth of Sisyphus, as well as tying the two together under the common umbrella of Camus' theory of absurdism. So Camus' theory of absurdism instantly delves into the viewpoint that humans just must continue through life in all of its absurdities, no matter what it is, because at the end of the day, life has no meaning. You have to just continue forward. So, to begin, Sisyphus, who is that? Sisyphus was a man who was imprisoned in Tartarus, and he is given this task to roll a boulder up a very large hill. And once the boulder reaches the very top of the hill, it is immediately rolled back down. Just rolled back down. And Sisyphus must continuously roll this boulder up the hill, all for it to just come back down again, and he does this over and over in an endless cycle for eternity. Now we have Jane Eyre, who is the titular heroine from Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, probably her best-known work. So Jane Eyre, at the beginning of the novel, starts as a orphan who just has a really bad deal at life. She's in an abusive situation throughout her entire early childhood and throughout her middle childhood. Her aunt and her cousins mistreat her horribly, and then when she transfers to school, she is treated even worse by Mr. Brocklehurst and everybody at the school. She does have some, help along the way, but she does not have a good lot in life at all. And despite the absurdity of her situation, the absurdity that is just her abuse and her life, she continues through her younger days. And as she grows older, the absurdity even continues, comparing Jane and Sisyphus. So Sisyphus and Jane ultimately are reconciling with the idea that their lives have absurd elements and that they will continue forward. Sisyphus, he, as I said earlier, will just continue to push that boulder because his life is absurd, his circumstance is absurd, but he will continue and push and persevere because at the end of the day, his life will not be getting any better. And Jane is very similar in the fact that as she begins her life, she continues to push through, and I'm skipping a lot, but despite her very traumatic childhood, she decides to stay at Lowood School. She teaches for about 2 years, I believe, and then she decides to change it because she doesn't want to just stay in one place. So then she becomes a governess and teaches this French girl named Adele, and then ultimately ends up with Mr. Rochester. So in the novel, Mr. Rochester, it is revealed that his wife, Bertha, she was mentally unwell. There's a lot of absurd elements in Jane Eyre. To begin, at the beginning of the book, she's kept in this red room where her uncle had passed away. She hears Bertha, there's a scene at the end of the book that I'll touch on later about her hearing Mr. Rochester from miles and miles away. The book has very absurd gothic elements, and Jane's life is definitely nothing of the ordinary. But the real high point that to me showed that Jane was an absurd hero and that she will push, she will stay true to her ideals, and she will stay true, more importantly, to herself, despite, romance and danger. She will continue on and keep herself at bay. She later finds out that Mr. Rochester is engaged. He's going to become engaged to this woman. He's going to leave her. Jane is in love with him. At this point, she doesn't know about his wife. So Jane is just trying to rationalize with him and rationalize with herself more about him leaving her and trying to argue and what are you doing? And Mr. Rochester tries to just calm her down, get her to just calm herself, but she becomes angry and she says, "I am no bird and no net ensnares me. I am a free human being with an independent will." And so this really ties into the whole absurd idea because Jane ultimately will continue through, and she's basically telling Rochester in this moment, I have no master. I am my own master. I will dictate my will. I will dictate what I want, and you, nor anybody, will take that from me. I will continue on throughout my life. I will continue. And this is mirroring back to Sisyphus, who will just continue through life. Jane will just continue in her own way, and her own state of mind, and her own heart. So the next topic that I will be delving into from Jane Eyre is how exactly Camus' theory is shown throughout Jane's character growth. So Jane does not begin as the strong woman she ends as. She initially begins as an orphan who just wants to survive. She just wants to get through her abusive childhood. She wants to get through Lowood School. She just wants the light at the end of the tunnel. She's not expecting anything else for herself. And in doing so, you would expect her at that point in time to just sort of deflate and take whatever she can get, and eventually throughout the novel she falls in love with Mr. Rochester. This is the main plot line, and Mr. Rochester can offer her a sense of security and a sense of love and companionship that she's never known in her life, but he can't truly marry her because his wife Bertha and he, although she is mentally and she's kept away, he cannot truly marry Jane, so she would only really be his mistress and not his wife. But she would have all the luxuries, she would have the companionship, she would have every single thing. But despite all of that, and all of the absurdity of the situation with Bertha, and all of the situations with Mr. Rochester engaged to another woman and leaving, and then coming back and saying, Jane, I love you, and explaining the whole situation, and everything is going on, and it's just crazy, and Jane's life has just been, whoa, insane. But despite all of this, despite the craziness, and then despite the fact that she could gain a companion and financial stability for the rest of her life, she turns it down. And her reasoning is because of herself. Because she will stay true to herself and make her own decisions and continue through life, because that is who she is at her core. She's a person that has her own morals and her own attributes held higher than anything else, especially her morals. So she will not marry Rochester, because she doesn't believe it is the Christian thing to do. And she says this by, I care for myself. The more solitary, the more friendless, the more unsustained I am, the more I will respect myself. I will keep the laws given by God, sanctioned by man. I will hold to the principles received by me when I was sane and not mad as I am now. Laws and principles are not for times when there is no temptation. They are for moments such as this, when body and soul rise in mutiny against their rigor, stringent as they are, inviolate they shall be. If at my individual convenience I break them, what would be their worth? Preconceived opinions, foregone determinations are all I have at this hour to stand by. There, I plant my foot. So, to break down that quote, it's definitely a lot. Jane is saying to Rochester, I see your offer. The temptation is there, but I know myself, and I know my morals, and basically she has not had enough time. She's not a proper lady. She has been orphaned. She's been abused. She's been in all these different situations. This was her way out. But despite the absurdity, despite the craziness, despite the just uncertainty throughout her life that could be solved with this, no, I will make my own path. I will do my own thing because my morals do not align with your decisions. My morals do not align. I will not be a mistress. Jane Eyre is a modern absurdist hero whose character arc and growth reflect both the characterization of prime absurdist hero Sisyphus and Camus' theory of absurdism. So I've talked a lot about Jane's, denying of temptation, and Jane speaking for herself and her morals, and that at the core is absurdism. It is staying true to your roots and continuing on despite life's challenges, despite life's obstacles. And she and Sisyphus both will continue throughout their lives and continue throughout eternity, knowing that they themselves made their own decisions, that they will just continue despite how absurd everything is around them. Jane and Sisyphus will continue. And Jane Eyre is a complete modern hero. She is a feminist icon. She just, she speaks for herself despite everything, despite her life, despite her lack of privilege, despite her life of wealth, and then her wealth grows and her status grows. And despite this, the entire novel, she grows in herself and grows to love herself and grows to love her choices and her character and her attributes and everything about her that she was so insecure of in the beginning. She finds herself through Rochester, and she finds herself, more importantly, through herself. So she will continue on throughout life with or without anybody else, because she knows the path that she wants for herself, and she knows the morals and the attributes that she has will guide her. And Sisyphus will continue with that rock because he has it in himself that he will continue. And all of these tie into Camus' theory on an absurdist situation and character, because both of these characters will just continue and not let anything else affect them and go throughout life. So thank you so much for watching.